Will someone please explain to me the meaning of bankruptcy? If you do so, I'll be in forever in your debt.
Hello and welcome to the show, Colourful Conversations with Clergyman Pete and Businessman Mark. This week we debate going bust and still having a ball. Well, remarkably, criminals and dishonest debtors are exploiting weaknesses in the bankruptcy system and still keeping hold of their assets, according to certain reports. Well, yes, former millionaires are enjoying a lavish lifestyle, at the expense, of course, the taxpayer, and yet seemingly untouched by insolvency. Why is this? How are they getting away with it? Maybe something needs to be done. But of course, it's not just individuals. We've seen also in recent times companies going into insolvency. And these companies, such as Carillion, for example, are perfect examples where they've been mismanaged. How do we stop this problem? But of course, it's not just those. Celebrities as well have declared themselves bankrupts, haven't they, Mr. Becker? Yes. Well, with me today is a very solvent clergyman, Pete. Now, clergyman Pete, what is it that we need to do as companies, as a government, and as a society to stop people exploiting weaknesses in the system?
Well, I think that what we need to do is, first of all, to recognise that bankruptcy in itself is a good thing. It's a necessary part of having a capitalist system. If you're going to have businesses succeed, particularly new businesses, or perhaps a whole new market being opened up, there's going to be risks being taken. And so there needs to be a way for people to be forgiven debt. Otherwise, they're not going to take the risk with their capital. The Bible has this in mind, and a lot of Western law, law in Western countries, I mean by that, is based on biblical law, certainly those in Britain and the US, that's true, and by extension other Western countries. Deuteronomy chapter 15, starting at verse 1, says, "At the end of every 7 years, you shall grant a release of debts." And what they did then was that each creditor who lent anything had to then release it. And that meant that there was a way of not actually becoming completely destitute by lending money, so people would actually lend money. You could start up businesses, and that idea of being forgiven debts is carried over into bankruptcy law. But of course, it doesn't work without the moral code of Christianity as well. It doesn't work if people are going to be dishonest and abuse the system. So, I mean, that's a hint of what we need to do. There needs to be a way of getting back to people being trustworthy enough to be bankrupt.
Yes. Well, you mentioned a couple of things. Risk certainly is part of business, and we don't want to stifle that. But there's different types of risks. There's calculated risk, where you know, and you've done all your due diligence, you know exactly what you want to do. It doesn't matter whether you're a small business or a large organization. But then there's risk where you gamble to the point where actually you're putting livelihoods at risk. I'm going to start again with the individuals. So remarkably, certain cases that have come to light really are quite extraordinary how they're still getting away with it. This is a chap who's a convicted fraudster, Barry Hughes, who declared himself bankrupt way back in 2014, owing a remarkable £10 million and claiming he had absolutely no assets. Now, unfortunately, he has been seen driving with his wife in a luxury car worth over £500,000. And yet, when we look on another example, a former millionaire mining tycoon, Graham Gillespie, failed to disclose multiple assets to creditors during his £12.8 million bankruptcy deal. Now, the fact is that at the time, one asset being sought was by his trustees was to pay the debts of an exclusive private registration plate, which, incidentally, for your awareness, was GG1, which was worth £180,000. Now, Mr. Gillespie told the authorities that he'd sold it off to pay some gambling debts. Now, Uh, that does actually make you wonder straight away that there's been some irresponsibility. Gambling is one thing, and taking a calculated risk is another. We know that businesses can fall foul to market forces if, for any reason, they took a calculated risk, thinking they might buy some stock just to try and exploit a market opportunity. Things can go wrong sometimes, but when you just simply gamble, that's not particularly
Mm,
sensible business practice.
yeah.
I also want to come on to the Carillion situation because this one, it sticks in my craw. The reason being is that Carillion, being a well-known and established organisation, has for many, many years taken multi-million pound contracts from the UK government. And this is something that on the Mark and Pete show we've talked about quite a lot, which is people not thinking long term. They've been taking short termism measures. And Carillion is a very good example where banks should have perhaps raised the issue about their financial situation a little bit earlier. And more importantly, it's the auditors. I think something needs to happen there. There are just not enough auditors, competitive auditors, to come into the market. Surely auditors should have recognized that this is a company that was being driven in the wrong direction. And now we've got the situation where not only already hundreds of people have lost their jobs, but more importantly, small businesses as well potentially could go bust because of the result of some maverick practices by former directors of Carillion. And I think that this is where, things need to be tightened in regulation. That's in the banks, in the companies, in the way that they run, and particularly the auditing. It's the auditing, to me, that I think needs to improve. So, Clergyman Pete, I must ask you that it seems incredible, isn't it, that wherever we look at this moment in time, even though we do have laws in place, it seems that individuals as well as companies can almost get away with anything. They're
Yes.
having a war.
Yes. Yes, that's right. The issue with the entire capitalist system, including bankruptcy, you need bankruptcy, as I was saying earlier, in order for a capitalist system to work. But in general, we haven't experienced capitalist. What we've experienced, which is what's sometimes called corporatism or crony capitalism, that is to say, uh, capitalism, but where people can tilt the playing field, can get a bias, can have things work in their favour by they're getting people in the government to have regulations or decisions made which are in their favour. I mean, one of the classic things is increasing regulation, because if you increase regulation, then larger companies which can afford to have whole departments looking at compliance with regulations have an advantage over small companies where even one person is a huge amount of their company. So a smaller company is immediately at a disadvantage. And so you don't get a fair playing field with
No.
corporatism. You need the government to provide the free market. Free markets don't just exist by themselves, they need to be guarded and protected. And at an individual level, you need people committed to a moral way of life. This is why capitalism grew up in Christian countries. That's where it's grew up. It didn't grow up elsewhere. It grew up in Christian countries. Some people trace it back to the Middle Ages. Certainly, the Europe of the 19th century and Britain of the 19th century saw the real capitalism as we know it now. And the social scientist Weber, however you pronounce his name, talked about the Protestant work ethic being vital
Yeah.
for capitalism. That's vital in that there's an idea that you have to be honest, and if you're not honest, you're a pariah in society. Without that, capitalism can't work, and bankruptcy can't work. You need to have trust in there. You need to have
Yes.
regulations that are known to be fair, including in their extent and number of regulations. And also, you need to have at an individual level businessmen and business owners being honest, and honesty being something that you really crave. You want to be seen as honest. As soon as now, we have people just glorying in the fact that they're bankrupt, getting lots of money, and lots of people not being caught, like the cases that you cite, but getting away with it.
Yes.
I mean, I know that people. There's been an effort by governments in UK and the US to tighten up on payment back of debt and on bankruptcy, but still, it's there's too many loopholes,
That's the
and
problem.
yes, too many loopholes. And then the loopholes wouldn't be a problem if you weren't trying to find them, but they are a problem because there is no shame in dishonesty, mainly inconvenience these days.
Well, remarkably, actually, we're not just talking about the ordinary people in society. And when I say ordinary, what is ordinary? And the titles of the landed gentry are still also seem to be struggling. Now, what it is noted that, unfortunately, despite the fact that some people may have grand mansions, some of them are living beyond their means. And what that often cites is that they are on the surface appearing to be extremely wealthy, and yet underneath they're in terrible debt, and are also, as we've already seen in recent times, siphoning off money elsewhere to try and hide themselves from bankruptcy. Now, here's just a simple little poem which perhaps illustrates the point, that it doesn't just affect the you and I. This is a little poem called "Where There's Muck." Eminent
Okay.
Lord and Lady Muck found their lives ran out of luck, each pocket skint and without a buck, and their social standing came unstuck. The Lord felt such a smuck, the Lady looked like a doomed old duck. All luxuries they began to chuck, filling up an entire dumper truck. Their reputations were quickly struck. Society saw their fortunes suddenly suck, as the mocks run amok into a gloopy guck. Now they're known as Lord and Lady Yuck. So there you go. So it's not just about having a title, and yet sometimes, strangely enough, yes, our titled people certainly in Britain aren't really doing that well. Some of them don't have a few pennies to scrape together, and they are having to declare themselves bankrupt, sell off huge assets, whether that's cars, whether that's mansions, or even acres of land, just to pay their way. So I think I can understand that. Is this driven by social standing, that people don't want to feel as though that there's a stigma attached to being bankrupt, and so they'll do anything possible to just simply not be declared bankrupt? Is that really what it is? Is this really the nub of it now? Just simply that it still has a stigma?
I think there are two trends. I think we're seeing two separate things. One is the stigma attached to bankruptcy, but yes, people were trying to avoid that, and will avoid it at all costs. But once people have been through it, it seems they think, oh, it's not so bad,
No.
And almost make a career of it. So there's two different trends we're seeing there. We can't.
Well, we've seen Mr. Becker recently.
Yes.
He's got himself into a little bit of a pickle, hasn't he?
Yes.
He's no longer
What-
in the net positive, is in the net negative, as we say.
Yes, yes, and always in the net, as I remember. Yes,
Definitely
yeah,
in the net now, yes,
yeah,
sadly. So he was a man. I mean, he's a man who certainly earned millions of dollars out of the game of tennis, and suddenly has had to declare himself bankrupt. Incidentally, by the way, that he has tried to sell off a lot of his trophies and medals. Unfortunately, for some reason, he can't find them. So if you could help him out, clergyman Peter,
I'll have a look.
eternally grateful.
Yes, I think I can help him out. No problem. I mean, he was always very good at returns, so I'm not sure what the problem is there. So, yes, I mean, I think yes, there are high-profile cases where people have got into trouble, but this idea of bankruptcy not being an issue for some people, and yet being a fear for others, it's strange. But I think we need to return to the former, that it is an issue, that you don't want to be bankrupt, unless it's absolutely necessary. I think it's important to have that in place. Otherwise, the system doesn't work. I'll put it like this way: you need bankruptcy, but it needs to be a last resort. It's a little bit like using the cane in schools. It's a corporal punishment is a last resort, but it needs to be there. And I believe that's also the case with bankruptcy. You don't want to have to use it, but if it's needed, it needs to be there. Because
Yes.
without it, as I said before, there's a lack of risk taking. With it not taken seriously, there's a lack of honesty, and so you need to plough that central furrow there and have it present but difficult to get.
Indeed. Well, listeners, what do you think? I mean, do you think that government should bail out companies like Carillion, or should they actually be made an example to say that this cannot carry on? This is something that actually is just something that is an issue that investors should consider, let alone banks and auditors. And that's something that I'm sure will rage on over the weeks and months to come. Or do you think that there's something else that should be done here? Should we be pursuing those people who are leading businesses into the abyss? And should they be accountable? And perhaps the law should be targeted in those areas. Well, let us know. Why not log on to markandpete.com and let us know your thoughts. Well, thanks for joining our show today, and join us again next time for more colourful conversations with Clergyman Pete and Businessman Mark. Toodle pip.